all right now, AFC in the books. But there's a whole other conference we're going to dig into now, figure out how the playoffs all shook out. No better place to start than right here in Los Angeles, where the Rams and Niners did battle in a classic. Hit it, Ricky.
Stafford back on first down, throws a deep one down the right sideline for Odell Beckham Jr. Intercepted by Ambry Thomas. Ambry Thomas takes it away. The Rams only have one timeout remaining. The 49ers are going to win the game in L.A., and they have won the game. They are going to Dallas, Arlington, Texas next week to end it.
Greg Papa with the call, KNBR. Ambry Thomas, the rookie, closed it out with the interception of Matthew Stafford in overtime, allowing the San Francisco 49ers to defeat the Los Angeles Rams 27-24 at SoFi Stadium. SoFi Stadium that was packed with Niners fans. I mean, that told you something right there. In this game, Greg, the Niners overcame a 17-0 first half deficit. They took the game over in the trenches, gave the lead up again, but they kept coming back and they closed it out. They're going to the playoffs where they'll face the Cowboys next week in Dallas. The Rams, even though they lose, still win the NFC West because the Cardinals gagged, and they will host the Cardinals next week. Crazy game, fun game, lived up to the hype, Greg.
Yeah, I can't think of many cases of a team forcing their way into the playoffs with a more stirring win than this. To be trailing 17 points in the second half, and we know that the 49ers needed this win because of what happened in that Saints-Falcons game to get into the playoffs, to come all the way back, to need a touchdown drive going the length of the field to tie it, to force overtime with no timeouts, to get it is one of the moments, obviously, of the Kyle Shanahan era, of Jimmy Garoppolo's career, and to me, one of the worst moments of Sean McVay's coaching career, because I put a lot of this game on the way he handled the last couple of minutes.
You're referring to after the touchdown to tie it, I assume, at 24, the Rams get the ball back with some timeouts and a little bit of time.
No, I'm talking about when they have the lead and they're near midfield. What is it? 24-17, right? Under 2 minutes to go. You bring in Matthew Stafford. You need one first down to end the 49ers season, to end this 5-game streak. And what do? You call 3 straight runs, the third of them on 3rd and 7 with total give-up play. You know it's not going to get it. You are choosing at that point on 3rd and 7 that you would rather take the final timeout from the 49ers than give yourself a chance to win. It was an unbelievable Herm Edwards moment, topped a few seconds later, or a drive later, when it's 24-all. And yeah, they get the ball to the 37 or so. Matthew Stafford is sacked with about 13 seconds left, and they let the time click off. That wasn't as bad to me as the 3 straight runs, but that was insane too. They had time for at least 2 plays, and they were only 25 yards away from field goal position with the Pro Bowl kicker. That was 100% Sean McVay, like losing his nerve or his mind a little bit and not thinking clearly, because I bet if he could have especially that last sequence over, he would absolutely take a timeout and not tell his offense that we're giving up. We're not going to give you a chance to make a play. It's unreal, man. Ugh. I was blown away by that.
Can I just, Mark, before I throw it to you, I'm going to play the other side of this. I didn't hate the move to run the ball 3 times there. You had gotten a huge interception. Then your offense went down the field. Go-ahead touchdown. Niners come on the field. You get a 3-and-out. And McVay then had a decision. He felt like his defense had settled down, and he said, we're going to play ball control. We're going to kill the timeouts. We're going to take this thing down to a minute and a half to play and force San Francisco to go 90 yards against my defense that I trust and believe in, filled with all these stars. And they totally gagged.
You can trust it when you don't pick up the first down by trying to throw the ball. He's just like so unbelievably conservative in these situations.
I understand that. I understand what you're saying. He's conservative.
The situation
there.
wasn't changing. All it was taking a time out or two away.
Okay,
the clock wouldn't change. Listen, nothing would change.
I know it all looks like the timeouts didn't matter because they went right down the field, but the fact that they had to go 88 yards without a timeout. Now, Mark, they did it. And I guess what I'm saying is I understand your side of that, Greg, but McVay said, I trust my defense to not give up a touchdown here. And I thought they gagged in a big spot.
I'd love to hear what he has to say about the sequence that you mentioned, Greg, as well. I mean, this is a team that has been totally owned and a coaching staff that's been totally owned by the Niners. And we knew that coming in. And I thought that this came down to so many impressive individual performances from both teams. Honestly, it was one of the games where it's like, I know we have like 22 games of the year. It was one of the most enjoyable football contests that we've seen this season. And it stood out in a big spot. And for me, I mean, Jimmy G, for all the stuff that Garoppolo's gone through this year, this offseason leading up, that was a signature moment and a signature drive by him. And it was just guys like, all sorts of Niners players stepping up. I love that they did not abandon who they were when they were down 17-0. They came out with that 10 straight runs, then the Deebo Samuel touchdown pass. I mean, it's like to me, that would have been a big spot for them to get away from their identity, lose themselves a bit, and the Rams capped the thing. I mean, the Rams looked more like the Niners the way they opened it with a 13-play field goal drive, a 12-play touchdown drive. The Niners were in deep space early on in this thing and did not flinch. I'm so glad that they made it into the postseason because the way they're coached, the way they operate, they're imperfect, but they are going to give the Cowboys a test.
They make
plus our Super Bowl picks
NFC playoffs.
Our Super Bowl picks are alive, Mark. We picked the 49ers to win the Super Bowl. It's still alive.
Well, I'm not surprised that, that's come to fruition.
Although you jumped off it halfway through, I remember.
By the way, don't worry about that.
The San Francisco 49ers make the NFC way more interesting in the playoffs here. We'll get to the Saints later. Kudos to how they finished their season. They deserve a lot of credit considering everything they were up against. But I think the 49ers have a chance to go through that conference if they get hot. And yes, I agree totally about Garoppolo. I think he is a guy who's a bit of a punching bag. I certainly have not always been very high on him. I thought they were cooked when they were down 17-0, and he seemed to be not playing at a high level with the bad thumb and everything. And he made so many big throws down the stretch. And I thought that drive that we were just talking about when McVay decided to punt it away and take the timeouts away and put it in Garoppolo's hands and say, this guy's not going to beat us. And he carved him up. It wasn't even competitive. It was 5 plays, 88 yards and 61 seconds in a tie game. And I mean, so much of that goes back to, I think he's not in Cooper Kupp, I think, is the offensive player of the year. I think Cooper Kupp has a very good chance or should have a good chance of winning MVP. But if you watch Deebo Samuel every Sunday this year, this guy is unbelievable what he brings to this team. And as long as he stays healthy and Brandon Ayuk stays on the field and George Kittle's around with that running game, I think this team really is dangerous. Samuel was dominant in many ways today.
I also think that Samuel, there are a lot of divas in this league that would not accept the role that he was put into, where suddenly you're becoming a running back. I mean, when they scouted him, Shanahan, they talked about in the game that Shanahan saw those qualities in him, but he is an unselfish player who is incredibly dynamic, and they trust him to do so much. And he's an absolute raging star for this team.
Right. The 2 big plays on that drive was Ayuk to start it for 21 yards, making a great play after the catch, and Samuel making an even better play, a perfect throw from Jimmy G, but then Samuel makes it special, going for 43 yards after the catch. I think a lot of quarterbacks could succeed in this situation, and they overcame Jimmy G's 2 interceptions here. But I guess I'm being hard on McVay because it's the biggest moment of the season, right? And he lost his composure. They took 2 timeouts on defense in the overtime. We haven't even mentioned overtime, which the 49ers go down, get a field goal. The Rams do stop them in the red zone. And then at that point, the Rams have to go score a touchdown because a tie, what's the point of a tie in this situation? Really, you want to knock the 49ers out of the playoffs, and the 49ers would have made the playoffs with a tie. They didn't have any timeouts left because they had used their 2 timeouts in totally bizarre situations before that, on one of them, including right before the kick, which I guess it was just a straight, I don't know if it was a La Raville, but it was I think, one of his worst moments in terms of McVay at the end. And a lot of people are going to get on Stafford too. You had the interception while the 49ers are making that comeback. It's a bit of an arm punt, but it was a bad throw. And then you finish with how they finished, which was like one of the worst series Odell Beckham could have possibly had. It appears that he ran the wrong route on the first snap, got in the way of Kupp, and then Stafford has a bad throw to OBJ, who did stack the cornerback. It was behind him, so it was more on Stafford there, but it was just like a bad sequence in general.
I know this isn't a popular take because everyone's always defend Odell to the end, but can you compete for that ball there a little bit more? I don't know. It was underthrown, but he didn't.
Yeah. I think one of his issues a lot of the time is he doesn't locate the ball like quick enough in that situation. He just didn't see the ball clearly. I mean, he was behind the defender, so it's tough to really put too much on him when the quarterback underthrows it. But just the play before, I mean, that was 3 straight incompletions to Odell Beckham to finish that game, and this game mattered for the Rams. I know they won the division anyways, but they're now the 4 seed. I don't think the matchup is particularly harder in the first round. You know, you get the Cardinals. Although who would they have had? They would have had the Saints. So the matchup is much harder. Yep. They would have had the Saints as a 2 seed and a possible home game in the divisional round. And now instead you've got the Cardinals, which is a tougher wild card. And you're going to be, if you win, going on the road to Lambeau in the second round. That's a big difference.
One little thing about the Rams, I thought that they, in the second half especially, in the first long stretches of the third quarter, their offensive line, which has, I think there were doubts about their O-line coming into the year, but they've done a commendable job overall. But I thought they were dominated by the Niners front. They went into overtime with Stafford taking 5 sacks. At one point, he looked injured. I just think this team, like, we've seen their high moments. You kind of could project them to go to the Super Bowl, but I also think that they've got a bit of a tight butt situation heading into the playoffs based on this game. I mean, it seems like every couple of weeks there are doubts surrounding the Rams. It was their toughness. It's, can Stafford get out of games without multiple interceptions and turnovers? And now you've got this thing with Sean McVay, and they've got a lot to answer for a week from now.
And yet they are the NFC West champions, and they will be playing at home next week against a fading Cardinals team. Fading is the way to describe them. Let's talk about the Arizona Cardinals, who had a chance to steal the NFC West if they could just beat the 6 and 10 Seahawks in their own building. They couldn't do it.
Russ takes the snap, hands to Penny. He gets a backside cut. He goes across midfield, down to the 40. He's going to outrun him. 30, 20, 10, 15, 10, 5. He is in. Touchdown, Seahawks. Rashad Penny was going so fast. He was crossing yard lines that I didn't even see. 62 yards, ran away from the defense. Rashad Penny, what a day.
Steve Reibel, K-I-R-O, with the call. Man, Rashad Penny, former first-round pick, all but forgotten as injuries derailed his career. He was a monster down the stretch for the Seahawks. He ran for 190 yards and that score. Russell Wilson threw 3 more touchdown passes, averaged over 9 yards per attempt. And the Seahawks knock off the Cardinals 38-30. As I said, Arizona still goes to the postseason, but they limp in as the number 5 seed for their matchup with the Rams. The Seahawks go home, but they at least resembled themselves down the stretch. Greg, how did this game play out?
It played out like the Seahawks were the playoff team. I mean, they just looked like a better team. The Cardinals, to me, were lucky to be in this game towards the end. At halftime, it was 229 yards for the Seahawks, 86 for the Cardinals. It took a Gerald Everett drop in the end zone, wide open play, which has kind of been, unfortunately, his specialty this year, and a Chandler Jones forced fumble that turned into a touchdown by the Cardinals defense on like the second play from scrimmage to keep this thing close. But then the Cardinals come all the way back in it, and you think that they've righted the ship. But Seattle's offensive line was like great down the stretch. I mean, they were like opening up holes for Rashad Penny. Wilson was about as explosive as I've seen him this season in terms of like evading defenders. It was a lot of just Russell Wilson improvising as he runs around
Making
in the
statement
back.
On Rosenthal in a lot of ways.
He, I don't know. Like you looked at these two teams. I think they caught the Seahawks at the wrong time. But I went into this game thinking the Seahawks are just a better team right now, that they've played their best lately. It's mostly because of their offense. And the Cardinals are a bit of a mess. I mean, James Conner got hurt right at the end of this game too. I don't know if it was serious, but he converted a 3rd and 18 run and then left the game after that. And that got me worried because he made a big difference just by being out there today.
I worry about this team, this Cardinals team. It's just been a month straight of confused offense. They're banged up. Their defense, which used to be such a difference-making unit, they had a big play that was it a near pick 6 today that put them deep in Seahawks territory. But I mean, Rashad Penny has kind of made it impossible to deal with the Seahawks too. I mean, they caught him at the wrong time. They just caught him at the wrong time. And I look at the Cardinals, and they don't seem like the team they were 2 months ago. And Kyler Murray is so visibly frustrated today. He just seems something's not right.
He slammed his helmet on the ground sitting right next to the coach. I was wondering if that was because they didn't go for it on 4th and short, or whether he just was frustrated they didn't pick up the 3rd down. Because they did go for it earlier in the game in a similar situation.
Because we can say that they caught the Seahawks at the wrong time, but it's like, man, if you're any good, you're the Cardinals in that spot in Week 18, and you see the scoreboard, what's going on in Los Angeles, you should be able to take care of business. So I think when you look at the arc of their season, as disappointed as the Rams are tonight, even as division champions, you love that you have the Cardinals coming into your building. You probably would have liked it better if it was maybe the Eagles or the Saints, but
it would have been the Saints. Yeah.
You're feeling pretty good because you're like, okay, we can kind of reset things. We get a team that seems to be free falling out of the mix. Now, of course, this is the NFL and nothing really makes sense. And if Kyler Murray goes off for 4 or 5 total touchdowns next weekend, that wouldn't be stunning either. But I think at this point, we've seen enough from this offense really since Kyler came back to say that, is this going to be ever an explosive unit again for the rest of the year?
Right. They had a 19-play, 10-minute, 41-second drive that didn't even reach the Seahawks red zone, which is like an anomaly, but it also, to me, spells out how unexplosive this offense is. Like, each one of their receivers, Kirk, Green, and Wesley, like, made back-breaking mental errors in this game, and it's not like they're making up for it with great explosive plays. No,
they had 6 drives go for 17 or fewer yards. I mean, it's just completely counter opposite to the first encounter with the Rams, where they won, I think it was 37-20, and put up nearly 500 yards of offense. This is a different team right now.
Well, they have 2 big weaknesses right now. Their offensive line cannot protect Kyler. He was a disaster today. And again, I really think the Seahawks are playing well. Like, it took too long, but they've looked quite good over the last month or so. And their cornerbacks are really injured, where they're playing 2 practice squad guys. And if they could get healthier for next week, that would help. But if not, the Rams, as you said, Dan, have to love that matchup. And I do wonder if it shouldn't matter in theory, but I do wonder if this last couple of games helps Pete Carroll keep his job. You would think it would.
I could totally see that. I mean, and as much as from the outside, we all think, oh man, this Carroll thing has kind of run its course in Seattle. Well, they have a long track record of success there, even if there's only 1 ring. And the fact that they end strong, if him and Russell Wilson are in good terms, I would think it's more likely he comes back, both of them, I should say. Mike Garafolo reported early this morning that the Seahawks have no plans to trade Russell Wilson this offseason. So I guess now it becomes, if that report checks out as true, do they bring back Pete Carroll? I think they will. But
right, because who are the Seahawks that are not planning? You would assume that's John Schneider and Pete Carroll, and I think that's the bigger first question, is if whether those 2 guys return or not.
Well, and we thought we get all these anonymous reports by now, and there's just been not much heat around Carroll being
just like playing well
out of there.
Even when the season's a wrap and they're out of contention, just like lighting up a couple opponents at the end of a season, I think that matters in terms of calming things down a little bit.
Right. If you look at their statistical profile, like in terms of points scored and the analytics and stuff, it's like they almost have the exact same team in yards per play, stuff like that, yards per play allowed, as they did a year ago. It was just like they won a lot of close games last year and they lost them this year. One quick note, though, on not a lot of reports, is there was one report that was essentially there's no, which is essentially absolutely no one has any idea what Jody Allen is thinking. It's not like Jody Allen, who's, the sister of Paul Allen, Microsoft heir, is talking to literally anyone and is too involved. So I think everyone from Pete Carroll to Russell Wilson, which was the report, is in the dark and just is wondering what she's going to do.
I mean, could you pick Jody Allen out of a lineup? I couldn't. I
did just Google
not only
her.
do I not know what she looks like, I don't.
I Googled her recently just because I was curious about this very thing.
You did.
I was like, what is Jody? Because I didn't know if Jody Allen was a man or a woman. That was the problem. And it is a woman.
Remember the movie Dave?
Well, we've got that confirmed.
Mark, remember the movie Dave where the fake president comes to the White House?
Yeah.
And he needs to learn about like everybody in the cabinet and all these things, and they actually have the cardboard cutouts so he could, pass as the president. I do the same thing with not only ownership in the NFL, but also high-ranking executives and potential heirs, just so I'm the best version of myself when I do this show.
Well, you're very diligent.
Yeah,
you're very diligent, and I could follow your path in that, and yet I refuse to.
Can you imagine? Because it's not expensive, dude. Those cardboard cutouts that I get made for all these people, the Jody Allen cutout, that cost me $200.
Plus it's LA. Like, you need to find a place for this. It's like this is taking up a lot of your
lot of space.
Your home ownership that you have now.
Exactly. But it's all worth it to do this job the right way. Let's now move to Greg's darlings, the Saints, who are not playing next week, but they did their very best to get there.
Out of the I formation, fakes the handoff, play action. Taysom looking to the far side, complete to Troutman. Troutman makes the completion, and it's a touchdown. Adam Troutman on the far side, caught it at about the 3, and then headed right for the pylon. Touchdown, New Orleans.
Taysom Hill, he was looking good on Sunday in Atlanta, throwing a touchdown pass, driving the ball with accuracy. He has to leave the game with a foot injury. Trevor Siemian comes in. He throws a couple touchdown passes. The Saints cruise 30-20 over the Falcons. We now welcome in the pipe, Nick, Shook, and Shooky. The Saints needed help here. They needed to win, get to 9-8. They took care of their business. Then they needed the Rams to take care of the Niners. Unfortunately, that 17-0 lead in Los Angeles didn't hold up, so the Saints go home. But really an impressive close to their season.
It was impressive, and I think it was appropriate in the fashion that they did it because they lost Taysom Hill to injury and had to turn to Trevor Siemian to finish this one out, and finally got Alvin Kamara going for the first time in about a month. And yet, after putting together, one of their more complete performances, especially in the second half of the season, they end up sitting at home because, like you said, the 49ers were able to beat the Rams and knock the Saints out of the playoffs. And it really speaks to, for them, from a season-long perspective, a team that was dealt a tough hand, managed to fight through a lot of it, but ultimately that is what sank them. The fact that they couldn't win games. They couldn't win a game last week that they desperately needed to win. That type of situation, undercutting them and keeping them home for the first time, in 5 years, and the first year of the post-Drew Brees era ending in disappointment for them, even though they played well.
Counting on the Rams, it's like the Rams have broken the Saints' hearts a few times the last few years. I mean, they had the score bug of the Rams game in the corner of Saints-Falcons this whole time. So, you're seeing it's 17-0, and then you're seeing it's, 24-17 with under 2 minutes to go. It looked like the Saints are in the playoffs, and Trevor Siemian is probably starting that game because Laura Oakman on the sideline reported it was a Liz Frank injury for Taysom Hill, which was so disappointing. He was playing really well in this game, throwing it well, as you mentioned, Dan, and running it. And I know the better, more compelling team made the playoffs. I think that ultimately it's better for the overall product. But I actually think the Saints would have been a problem for the Rams if they had a healthy Taysom Hill especially. This team was just like one of the only defenses that mattered, and they finally were getting some playmakers to make some plays in this game and in the last couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it was, like I said, they got Kamara going. Their defense has played well for a long time. The Falcons were playing just letting it fly because they had nothing to lose, and it made for an interesting game and an entertaining game. But yeah, like you said, it's disappointing because they would be kind of a tough out just because of the defense that they've had for the majority of the season. Would make even the highest powered offense still kind of struggle at times in a playoff setting. But Hey, this is the value of a quarterback like Drew Brees. I hate to say it, but the first year you go into a season without him, you end up starting 4 different guys. Jameis gets hurt and gets knocked out. It throws your entire plan off kilter, and you're forced to kind of roll with the punches. And I give them credit. I mean, even today they fought through and played a good football game. It's just that all those issues compounded, and ultimately they lose by. They lose out in the playoffs by the skin of their teeth, and I think they're back to the drawing board because, if we look at them long term, which we have months to discuss this, but is Jameis Winston the guy? I mean, they were all right with him. They were probably in a better situation than they were with any of the guys after him. Taysom Hill, you can make an argument in the opposite direction, but this is how important a quarterback is.
Well, and they basically go into the offseason with similar questions they had last offseason, and it's one of the bigger off seasons in the NFC. And I don't think that the wise maneuver would be to settle with this same group of quarterbacks. I mean, it's not going to be easy to find someone else at this point as the Russell Wilsons don't get traded in X, Y, and Z. But I mean, from a Saints angle, you'd have to say Sean Payton did an awesome job this year. They other coaching and other coaching staffs would have crumbled with what they faced. But they cannot go do all of this again next year with completely depleted cast of characters on offense and a clown car of quarterbacks who are not ultimately the right guy.
I agree with you. Clown car, I guess, is a little strong because Winston was okay. He wasn't terrible before he got hurt. He had moments for sure. But I tend to agree with you that I think they're going to – Peyton's going to certainly, I think, kick the tires and see if he can upgrade the position because to work this hard to get to 9-8 – there's kind of a standard that they've set in New Orleans that they view themselves as a team that should be in contention for the Super Bowl every year, and they weren't. Kamara, by the way, 30 carries for 146 yards. That's not the typical Kamara workload that he's had in the past. I wonder what his workload will look like going forward if they see him as that type of let's use him as a bell cow, or do they want to get the offense moving in a different direction where they could use him the way they did with Drew Brees more? That will be interesting to see. Anything on the Falcons before we kind of close the book on their season, Shook?
We give credit to Russell Gage for having a nice game today. Put together a highlight play, a hurdle over a defender to pick up some extra yards. He looked good in the box score. I think season long, the guy that stood out to me more than anything, I mean, you could talk about Kyle Pitts. I mean, he was, a top 5 pick. That's what you're expecting from somebody like him. I thought A.J. Terrell took a ton of big steps in his second season. The next gen stats love him. I mean, he's a stud in that department, and I think he's on the course to be a name that you're going to pay attention to in years to come as long as they can figure out some other things because he's developed into a pretty solid corner in only his second year. So there's some positives, and I love the way they played for Arthur Smith this year. It's just that they didn't quite have the talent to be able to get over the hump and into the playoffs. If they spend an offseason adding some talent, then this might be a team you watch out for. And, of course, you have to answer quarterback long-term, but we'll cross that bridge when we get
More
to it.
on ESPN reported they want Matt Ryan back and that they're planning to bring him back. I tend to write these reports on, January 9th in pencil. It's almost like sending a message of like, what? Okay, we're behind you, Matt Ryan. But that it kind of makes sense to me because it's a pain. Like they could add a rookie with him, and it'd be a pain to get rid of him. And I think he played pretty well this year.
Well, the financials make it tougher than some have expected to just move on from him.
And it should also be added here, and maybe we'll get him on the show sooner rather than later. But Steve Weiss had speculated this past week that Calvin Ridley might be looking for a fresh start after this year, where he missed most of the season with what was termed as mental health issues. So a lot of stuff to figure out with the Falcons. The Saints, yes, they have a lot to figure out too, but they go out with their heads held high. Let's take a break and then hit one more game with Shookie.
Shotgun snap, lob down the left sideline. Evans is there. He's got it. That's touchdown number 2. That's touchdown, Buccaneers. My goodness.
That doesn't sound like Gene Deckerhoff, does it? Anybody?
I did not think it sounded like Gene
who
Deckerhoff.
knows?
My goodness,
Maybe
at the end was a nice touch.
I'm saying, well, it definitely wasn't him, but maybe something popped up for old Gene today. A lot of COVID opt-outs lately.
WFUS. The call came from whoever it was. Tom Brady put the finishing touches on another fantastically successful season, both individually and for his team, throwing 3 touchdown passes in a 41-17 win over the Panthers, who started 3-0, finished 5-12. But Matt Rule's coming back. That's what we're hearing, Shooky.
You're not going to find... You could term me a hater. You could term me whatever. I am not a fan of Matt Rule, and I think that the potential that was within this team, which really began in the offseason with the Sam Darnold experiment, which became an experience, and choosing to go that route over, spending your first-round pick on a guy like Justin Fields, then into this season and all the dysfunction they had offensively and how Darnold clearly wasn't the guy, and wasting a defense that played really well at times. The combined product was not up to standard, and it didn't fit for a guy in his second year who came in pretty highly touted and spoke, all the platitudes about building the program and we're going to do it the right way and everything else. It hasn't, showed to the field. And having said all of that, they had a 7-0 lead after the first quarter in this game. They were playing pretty hard. It's not like they quit on the guy. It's just that the product over the entire season is just not enough for me. I think he should be gone, but if he's coming back, he's coming back, and enjoy that, Panthers fans, and whoever you have at quarterback next year.
Let's spin to the Bucs here because they finished 13-4. They won the South. They will host the Eagles next week. I think that is the plum game that any high seed wanted. You wanted to get the Eagles, who I think are going to be out of their depth next weekend. And this is a team that you have to give them credit, Mark, because last month when they lose 9-0 to the Saints and they lose half their offense to injury over the course of 3 hours, no, were they dominant over the next 3 weeks? Did they almost get beat by the Jets? Sure. Did they lose Antonio Brown and that turned into a circus? Sure. But they closed and they stuck the landing by winning 3 straight to put themselves in good position here.
Yeah, it's the Tom Brady experience too. I rewatching that Jets game, just what he did at the end of that in that March and the way that they won that affair, it just reminds you that the ecosystem is going to be different with Tom Brady running the show. They're a low drama operation. They overcome this kind of stuff. I don't know if I see them quite as starry a prospect in the playoffs as I did a couple, and even injuries aside, just something about them feels a little bit off at times. But I don't know. I mean, they find a way. Like you're getting Rob Gronkowski putting up 130 yards. To me, it's like anything could happen in these playoffs because there is no true dominant team. I don't love the idea of them having to go into Green Bay, for instance. But outside of that, I think that this is a team that's going to hit the NFC title game.
Well, Gronk, having that big of a game, what was it, 137. So that puts him at about 800 yards for the season over. That is outrageous at his age at this point. And the fact that in this game, they were down 7-3. I checked late in the second quarter. There was about a minute to go in the first half. At that point in the game, the Panthers had 12 first downs, and the Bucs had 2. The Panthers were putting it on them. It was like 190 yards to 40. And I'm thinking, what a terrible way to go into the playoffs. And then I look up at the end, and it's 41-17. And that's been kind of the story of these Tom Brady Buccaneers in general since he's gotten there. You'll have halves like that, and then the avalanche will come hit you. And it doesn't matter that Cyril Grayson, who's been really good for them, gets knocked out with a hamstring injury, and you're without JPP, and you're without Shaq Barrett, and you're without Levante David, and those guys will matter in the playoffs. But, at the end of the day, they put up 41. It's outrageous. It's outrageous.
That's the thing is they tend to sleepwalk at times, and then when they wake up, you're toast. No matter, unless you've got a 4-touchdown lead, you're pretty much toast. He's completing passes to Brashad Perriman and Ty Johnson and Cameron Brate and Keshawn Vaughn. Scotty Miller had a touchdown run. That's the thing. You talk about all these injuries and how it might diminish their standing going into the playoffs. So I don't know if they can do it. They're missing a lot of guys. It doesn't matter with Tom Brady at the controls. All you have to do is do your individual job, to borrow the phrase from the Patriots. Do your job. He's going to find you, and more likely than not, you're going to score touchdowns, and they're still going to be a really tough out. So, going into the postseason now, this is how you want to go in, of course, with a win like this. But this, more than anything, demonstrates to me that I don't care who they have out there. As long as 12's back there, they got a really good shot.
This cannot be hit hard enough. And I know we're kind of hitting on it a little bit here, but I'm going to hit on it directly. Tom Brady is 5.5 years away from turning 50. And he just completed a season where he set a career high in his 21st season, by throwing for 5,300 yards. He threw 43 touchdown passes. He is, depending who you talk to, the favorite or one of the favorites for sure to win the MVP. He is 44 years old. And I just, again, for me personally, my fandom, like him getting away from the Patriots has allowed me to like not just wallow in the misery of him refusing to get old. And now I just get to enjoy it more because it's like, man, he's doing it again. And that's why, like Shook's saying, even with all these injuries, if you have him back there and no one knows how to play in the playoffs more than Tom Brady, and you just do your job, yes, I absolutely could see them being a Final Four team in a few weeks.
Hashtag gradual decline.
Incline.
In the OL, the offensive line, which is among, if not the best in the league, is healthy. And so that's really important. One very quick point, just because there's so much news out there today with all these reports. I do wonder if Matt Rule is 100% back. Jay Glazer reported that he'll be back if he hires a rock star offensive coordinator. Our guys said that the search essentially for a rock star offensive coordinator is coming. Like he's going to hire maybe a former head coach. Like Bill O'Brien was one name thrown out there. I don't think he would be a rock star. He does have a great relationship with Deshaun Watson, a quarterback that they're going to pursue. So you wonder if that's a factor. But the way Glazer said it, like if his status is dependent on like what happens with this coordinator hire, I don't think his status is 100% guaranteed here.
I got to give David Ely a hat tip, noted Panthers fan, because the Bill O'Brien thing. He said, well, if they hire Bill O'Brien, they're essentially just hiring their interim head coach. Because if that's the state of things, that's what you're setting yourself up for.
How many star offensive coordinators are there? I mean, I think they thought they had that with Joe Brady.
Yeah, they just fired one.
Right. And for people who have lost track of the Bill O'Brien carousel, he is the offensive coordinator of Alabama, which is a celebrated and highly successful college football program.
It has a big game on Monday night. Yeah.
And is interviewing for the Jaguars head coaching job as well. So
he's the latest product of the Nick Saban coaching rehabilitation program.
There you go. Shook, we have reached the end of our time in the regular season with you. We will absolutely love to have you on the show down the stretch and throughout the offseason, but we want to thank you again for the vital work you do for our program on these Sundays, like filling in the gaps, and not only just filling in the gaps, making the show better with your great analysis and genial attitude toward life.
Genial. I like that. Thanks, guys. I appreciate, it's been fun being on. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me this whole season.
All right.
Been great, Chuck.
Good man.
Really
Good
filling that gap. I mean, he overfills it.
Filling the part of that gap. The pipe. Now he's got to get back to the gym because the pipe never rests.
Oh, that grunt.
There he goes. The pipe. Out the door. We continue on now. So we're going through things. We're checking boxes. We're talking playoff teams. How about two more? This game played on Saturday, Cowboys-Eagles.
Dak Prescott, next touchdown pass would be the single-season record. And he's looking for it here. Throwing out to the left, it's caught and into the end zone. Touchdown, there it is. He finds Corey Clement, an 8-yard touchdown pass for Dak Prescott, his 37th of the season. A new Dallas Cowboys single-season record.
Westwood won with a call there. Dak Prescott threw a career-high 5 touchdown passes and broke Romo's record there. He did it against Eagles backups, I should say, but it is what it is. Cedric Wilson and Dalton Schultz each had 2 touchdown catches, and the Cowboys closed out their regular season with their second 50-burger in 3 weeks against an overmatched division foe. Final score 51-26 against the Eagles, a team that prioritized their health in the wild card round over a possible better playoff seed. Now, all that said, that was a nice win, Mark. I think you and I were on the same page on the Thursday preview show that even if the Cowboys didn't make a big change where they ended up, and they are the number 3 seed, they will face the 49ers in what will be a very tough game for them. To go into the playoffs on a high note, it helps. Even if it does, like in the back of my head, for instance, keep me wondering, is this team like, are they bullies? Can they pile on and beat up against these teams that are overmatched and then kind of cower a little bit against real competition? Real competition's coming. We're going to find out next week where the Cowboys really stand.
Yeah, that'll be the acid test. But we basically requested them to have an explosive finale, and they went and did exactly that. Now, I mean, look at the game. Some of these games where you've got people sitting, I get that this is not where we're going to be a week from now, but it showed Dallas flexing their muscles, and to me, it does bring more faith into their ceiling and what they can be. I think it's their defense too. They're a balanced team, and we've talked about how we feel about the Rams going in the way they have, the Cardinals fading fast. Like any one of these NFC teams that can go in and light a team up, I don't care how it happened, the way that Dallas did it, it adds faith, and I think that they're a dangerous opponent. I
think they needed it for themselves because they said as much. They just seem like a team that has some confidence issues. They're like too high or too low. They say, "Oh, don't get too high, too low." I mean, that's not what the Cowboys are. Jerry Jones likes to get too high, and they like to get too low. And Dak Prescott did not want to say that he was having a slump or that he wasn't playing with confidence, but you could just see it on the field. And so I think they came out and did this because they felt it was necessary. They played into the fourth quarter. Now, this game was tied 17-all late too. The Cowboys' offense was incredible the whole game. That had nothing to do with the offense. They just had only had the ball 3 possessions at that point, and they didn't have Tyron Smith and Tony Pollard, and they didn't have Micah Parsons either, so they were a little shorthanded. But the Cowboys' starting defense gave up 17 pretty quick points, and it looked like a game for a minute until they took over.
Gardner Minshew started for Jalen Hurts, and yes, he did lead the team to some scoring drives early, kept them in the mix. I did like that story about Minshew. I don't know if you guys saw this, that after the game against the Jets, he went into the coach's office and was like, "Coach, I deserve the ball. I should be the starter of this team." I thought that was adorable. I love this guy.
He is a dangerous quarterback. I know that, I don't know if you're being serious, Dan.
But it's an amazing move because, it's one thing to be the backup quarterback and do your job, but Jalen Hurts probably saw that story and he was like, "What? What?
It's a strange."
You're going into the coach's office and saying, "I deserve to be the starter."
That's a strange one, but he's got too much charisma. He can't be held down. That's Gardner Minshew.
I kind of like their backups. They had some feisty backups. Jason Huntley was fun. Tyree Jackson, who was he used to be a quarterback, was kind of fun. Quez Watkins is fun. They actually, I think, got some use out of this, looking at all of these guys. They also had 12 players on the COVID list. I think they strategically told a lot of guys to take that test last Monday so that they could get their COVID list designation out of the way, which is just a bizarre thing that you have to strategize in 2022.
Coach, these fellas believe in me, and now I ask you to believe in me. Put me in, Coach. I will lead you to the promised land.
Well, it didn't work.
It depends how he put it, because I think that could be kind of annoying. I've always held it against Drew Bledsoe a little bit. The report of how hard he kind of went into the coach's room and tried to get Tom Brady out of there. When Brady.
Hey, Skip, I reckon Jalen might feel a little bit sore about this, but I got to stick to my guns and tell you how I feel, and I'm the best man for this job. Give me the ball, Coach.
Well, I would like to see actual footage of how this went, because it's turning into a folly very quickly. I'm
reading a transcript from Eye in the Sky within Nick Sirianni's office.
All right.
Blake Jarwin is back, by the way. That's a nice little tight end duo you got with Schultz playing so well. And your guy, Cedric Wilson, Dan, had a monster game.
I like
Cedric.
On paper,
they're the best offense. On paper, they're amazing.
Do I have a Cedric Wilson connection that I'm unaware of?
I don't know. One show you were just like, this guy is really looking good.
I am fascinated. I'm always fascinated by the Cowboys. I like following America's team through the good times and bad. They're just compelling. They have such a wide variance in terms of how this is going to play out. They could meekly go out next week.
This was the worst draw, wasn't it? This was the hardest matchup you could have possibly had. Yeah,
I think so. I think they could lose 31-17 next week. I think they could drop a 40 burger. That wouldn't stun me either in advance, but and make a deep playoff run. I think it could go either way for America's team. I will tell you this. It's going to do a big number, that game. A lot of people are going to want to watch the 49ers and Cowboys. All right, let's move on now. So, yes, Cowboys. And I should say, yes, the Eagles. You don't want to kill the Eagles, obviously, because they arrested a bunch of people. Not a great way to go into the playoffs. Never beat a team with a winning record the whole season, at least the season ending with the team having a winning record. They now go to Tampa and we'll see how that goes. But I'm feeling pretty good about who I might pick as my lock next week. I'll just leave it as that. All right, let's now move to Detroit, where the Green Bay Packers were looking to win their 14th game, but the Lions, they don't play, man. They don't play.
Love works out of the gun. There's the snap. Love back. Love sets and throws over the middle. It is intercepted by the Lions. Intercepted down at the 43-yard line. Lions come up with a pick, and that's going to do it. Tracy Walker with that football.
Dan Miller with a call, WXYT. Aaron Rodgers threw 2 touchdown passes in the first half, set out the second half with nothing at stake, and the Lions, getting that interception at the end of the game, beat the top-seeded Packers 37-30. That was Jordan Love who threw the pick. He threw 2 interceptions late in the game. But Green Bay's playoff positioning doesn't change. Unfortunately, Mark, the Lions, one of those type of games. Great way to end your season. But if they just would have done what they were supposed to do and get beat by the Packers, whoever the Packers are playing, they would have had the number 1 overall pick because of what the Jaguars did. Instead, they stay at 2. Que sera, sera.
You know what? I love it for them, though, because they are playing so hard for Dan Campbell, and they just put everything out there today. I mean, they emptied the trick play compendium. They used all sorts of trickery on Green Bay, and they have gone for it on 4th down 40 times this season, which is the 4th most in the league. Excuse me. They just there's
Mark
something
getting
about
choked
them.
up talking about the
No, I just have this hideous
3-13-1 lines.
Cough.
Yeah.
It's another game like before where Aaron Rodgers is out at halftime and Jordan Love looks like a non-starter to me. I mean, just does not have it at this point. I thought it was important for Green Bay to get David Bakhtiari some snaps. He left and went into the tent, but seemed fine. But I mean, just a little bit of playing time, he'll be huge for them in the playoffs. And
was
Amon
it
Ross
related, the tent thing? Did they have any?
Yeah, he did his press availability afterwards and downplayed it. But yeah, it was an injury.
Yeah, but he seemed like unaffected by it later on. Amon-Ra St. Brown for the Lions, they have a star, and I know that they lose out on the 1st overall pick, but you can see little pieces here. And again, I think that they have found the right coach. I mean, I know the record is what it is, but they go into the offseason with some optimism.
Well, they broke the record for 4th down conversions. NFL record. Old nice. Dan Campbell.
That's good.
Throwing caution to the wind.
The Jaguars, unless they trade out of the pick, they won't be taking a quarterback, obviously. So if things hold, the Lions could have the pick of any quarterback. We'll get into all that as things play out. This isn't supposed to be a great quarterback class, but nobody knows anything, especially this time of year. It's not till the draft process plays out that you really get a better idea of where the quarterback market's going to be. But it could be one of those. And this affects, like, if you're a Jets fan too, for instance, with 2 first-round picks in the top 15. I hope this isn't one of those Eric Fisher, Luke Jokel drafts. Nobody wants that.
No, people like the talent, I think, at the top of this draft. A lot of defensive
right. Maybe
players
just not a good
skill.
quarterback class as much. But anyway, so the Packers, it doesn't change. I don't know if you guys have any takes about the Packers. To me, for instance, they're going to still be number 1 in the power rankings. This doesn't change anything for me. And the fact that Bakhtiari got back on the field and got some reps as long as the knee's holding up, that's all great too.
Well, Josh Myers, too, they're starting center. So that's massive. And I think that's why Rodgers, said he wanted to play. It is worth noting the Lions had the lead, when Rodgers sat. So they had a halftime lead. It doesn't shock me the way the Lions have been playing lately that they would be competitive. I don't take too many big takeaways, but I haven't been overly impressed with the Packers defense in the back half of the season. I actually think teams kind of built like the Lions with a good offensive line, a good running game. Like they struggle to get off the field a little bit, this Packers.
Yeah, they scored three on their first 4 drives, the Lions, and they were legit drives. I mean, they look much, much better than they had at earlier stretches of the season.
Is this the most successful 3-13 year ever?
I think so, because they're so fun to watch too. And again, it's they kind of play with this daring do, where again it's the 4th down attempts. It's this check out some of the trick plays they pulled off today. And I mean, I think that they're a team that if you look at what they've done over the last month plus, I think they're heading in the right direction.
They have changes coming too. They're getting rid of Anthony Lynn, their offensive coordinator, who lost play calling duties about midway through the season. And for what it's worth, Dan Campbell took it over as the head coach, and their offense was a lot better after Dan Campbell took over.
Hey, Greggy, You smell that?
What's up?
That's Mark Sessler predicting the Lions to make the playoffs next year, and us hearing about it for 2.5 months next summer.
I think he'll actually predict them. Yeah, he'll predict it in May. We'll go back on it in August, and then he'll claim it throughout the course of the season, but then go quiet.
Once again, we can't cover. Mark just got up and walked away right as I started to bring him up. So if I didn't tell the audience that Mark left, it would just make it look like he didn't say anything.
Here he comes. He's running back.
And he is back. Mark's back, baby. Yeah, Marky. I was just saying that you're going to, for 2.5 months next summer, you're going to be talking about the Lions going to the playoffs. That was my prediction.
I'm not quite there yet.
I know, but in the summer, you will be.
You will.
Oh,
yeah. Did you just puke, by the way?
Draft.
You sprinted out of there while you were coughing. That was a coffin sprint. I haven't seen that.
The old coughing sprint. Better than a coffin sprint. Right?
Man, this corona got me, but I was feeling good today until the show started.
All right. Hang in there, buddy. Let's keep moving through the NFC.
It is 3rd and 2. Cousins from under center. He's looking deep. Now he avoids a bear. Fires to Jefferson. Caught. Touchdown, JJ. He's JJ with a 45-yard touchdown reception. And it's 17-16 Bears.
Yeah, we predicted this one. Paul Allen of the Call, KFAN. Nice stat padding Week 18 finale for the Vikings. Kirk Cousins passed for 172 and 3 touchdowns in the second half, leading the Vikings to a comeback over the Bears, 31-17. Two teams with a head coach in danger of being canned. We'll see. We will have a podcast that will follow this one in short order, either Monday or Tuesday, addressing everything on Black Monday related. But as of this taping, both men are still employed. Anyway, Justin Jefferson tied the score there. KJ Osborne caught the go-ahead touchdown for the Vikings, who outscored Chicago 28-3 in the second half. Greg, who has the brighter future, the Bears or the Vikings?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Thank you.
You lean Field, the team that has Justin Fields. But I do like Vikings roster a lot better, and just their general makeup, even the way they've brought in talent, their organization. So I guess I'll go Vikings. That's tough.
I'd go Vikings too. I mean, I think also you've got a lot to attract a new head coach if they do move on from Mike Zimmer.
We'll have a lot to talk about. There's some ominous reports about Zimmer. There's no need to get too deep into it now because we'll find out. But it sure looks like both these teams will probably be.
Well, did you hear Zimmer snap at a reporter who asked him about his job security?
Let's listen in.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything about your job status, and what are your thoughts just on the rumors?
No, I haven't heard anything about my job status. I haven't heard anything about yours either.
Do you think there was a chance this could have been your last game as a Vikings coach?
Not my choice. Not my decision.
Yeah, so he seems like Zimmer is just over it. Last week when they were asked if Kellen Mond was going to get the start, if he needed to see him, he's like, no, very flatly. One of my favorite coach responses. He's very much like a Parcells type guy. I like Zimmer, and I think it's going to be a bummer if he doesn't stick around. But at the same time, results matter. This was, by the way, truly the DGAF Bowl. You have Zimmer, who's he doesn't care anymore. And Bears coach Matt Nagy elected to go for it on 4th down 6 times, failing on all but one of those attempts.
Right. Dalton got sacked 3 times on 4th down, which you would have to check, but that had to have set an NFL record. I don't know if anyone's ever taken 3 4th down sacks in the same game.
Yikes. All right, let's quickly wrap up the NFC with the NFC Least Bowl.
Here's Fromm with the snap, throws into the slot, picked off Bobby McCain, 2015, 10-5, pick 6, touchdown, Washington.
Bram Weinstein, WTEM, Bobby McCain returned the first of his 2 interceptions, 30 yards to the house. Antonio Gibson ran for a career-high $146, scored a touch, capped his first 1,000-yard rushing season, led Washington to a 22-7 victory over the moribund New York Giants. Washington finishes at 7-10. Big Blue a mortifying 4-13. Dave Gettleman's Giants career almost certainly ends with this loss, the general manager, and we'll see what other changes we see with these 2 NFC East also-rans.
Jack Del Rio says he's back, the defensive coordinator. I didn't know that was up to him to decide, but I guess he knows. So Ron Rivera, it's a reminder. It's like, hey, Washington, you could be worse. You could be the Giants. You could be the clown show, to use Joe Judge's words from a week ago, that are the New York Giants right now, running a quarterback sneak power from their own 4-yard line on 3rd and 9, just to like give their punter a little extra room. It was a sad moment.
It is a sad moment, and that fan base that's had a lot of highs over the last 30 years or so. To hear the reaction in the crowd when they see a quarterback sneak called twice in a row at the goal line. The last one, third and 9, not even like a 3rd and 28 or whatever. It was like, you can go get that.
Against like a 9-man box too. Like both teams had everyone just condensed next to the ball. It looked like they were on the goal line, but it's like, no, you were on the 4.
Neither team had over 100 net yards passing in this game. That is not a frequent occurrence.
Yet my guy Terry McLaurin got 93 somehow on his own, going over 1,000. I'm losing a lot of sandwiches on Terry. It was a tough situation. It wasn't his fault.
We will, we're going to revisit our sandwich props on our next show. But I do remember you had something very lofty. Don't even let me know. I'd rather be surprised when we take a look at it again. But you were all in on Scary Terry. But he got bogged down by an offense that was just, from the Ryan Fitzpatrick injury on, they were not able to overcome the setbacks. And it's going to be a huge offseason for the Giants. I still, to me, feels like they could clean house. We're going to find out what happens over the next few days and weeks. But for the time being, there's no denying that the Giants ended the season as probably the worst team in football.
Yeah,
I don't understand how there's floating reports that Joe Judge will be retained. It's like it's a combination of bizarre press conferences and a team that is completely, totally regressed and has zero identity.
Daniel Jones looked better, I think, after watching what was going on. I mean, just in comparison. I do want to get, though, Mark, because I know you're going to be watching this on Game Pass later, just your detailed notes of all of your thoughts and takeaways for how this game changes your offseason. Just look at the Giants' defensive line and linebacker position.
I'll be sure to send you my notes post-haste.
Yeah, we do count on you, Mark, to handle this film study. We believe it.
Listen, you showed me how professional you are with the cardboard cutout scenarios.
Do you think Jalen Smith has a future? He had 5 tackles in this game. Does he have a future with the Giants? There's only one way to check. That's the tape.
Check with me on Tuesday, and I'll let you know everything that I've downloaded mentally about this.
We're going to carve out a section of our next show just to break down this game, the tape study, and we count on you because we know you're the man for the job.
Well, it sounds like a terrible task.
What was that, Mark?
Thank you for saying that.
There you go. All right, that's the NFC.